All right, guys. Hello and welcome to day two of the HACKME session organized by Jila Ganati Durgapur. So up until now, we have discussed the overall structure of our project. What kind of an application you will have at the end of the workshop, and till yesterday we learned the basics of Selenium. How Selenium works, the various methods associated with Selenium to capture and manipulate elements. Right? We learned about the Selenium WebDriver. We saw how to use XPath to capture elements, and that was about it, right? And we created the login function that allows you to log into Microsoft Teams. So today we will be discussing of how you can add a database, right? That will let you schedule your meetings, how you can manipulate the database, access the database to retrieve data from it, scheduling the meetings using that data, and then another function for joining and leaving meetings. Nirvik, you can take over now.
Yeah. So again, since the motive behind doing this session today on Microsoft Teams is that we can make the session an interactive one. So throughout the process, if in case you have come across some issues yourself while doing it yesterday or today, or if you are unable to follow something that we are instructing, you can always know. We will always ask you for doubts in between, and then you can turn on your mic, and then you can ask the doubts and you can get them cleared instantly. So it would be an interactive session also today.
Okay, so now I will basically start sharing my screen so we can pick up the code from where we left yesterday.
Also, before we start discussing the topics that we have scheduled for today, anyone who has any doubts or has come into issues after yesterday's session can ask it in the beginning now only.
Is my screen visible to you guys?
Yeah, Anurag.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Nirvik,
Yes, Bhaiya.
please look at the comment section. There is a question from Murgudu.
Yes. Okay, so Murgudu is asking, why did we have to switch from tiles to list? So the purpose that we did to switch from tiles to list was not due to some issues related to coding or programming. It was majorly for two reasons. One being it would make the bot more efficient, because let's say when you are in a team grid view and you are already present in a meeting, and then you leave the meeting, then you are greeted with that window of your team in which you are currently present. Now to go back to another team, what you have to go is you have to go back to all the teams, which will again list out all the teams in a grid view. Then you have to click on the next team on which you want to attend the other meeting, and then you will be able to click on the other meeting. So if this action is performed by the bot, it would take us like around 5 to 6 seconds for this switch action to happen. Whereas in the list view, you can say all the teams that you are enrolled into or you have access to are listed in a list way in your left pane. So directly you can switch from one meeting to other directly by clicking a single button, and you don't have to go back and forth. So this is the major reason that we have to switch from tiles to list. Though we can code make our bot work the same using the tile view. I hope it answers your doubt. Okay, so now yesterday we already mentioned that we are using some sort of database for handling our data. So today let us first start with the database part, as because the database part is like easiest to understand for now, and the database concepts like the data which we have stored will be used by the other functions, that is the scheduling function and the function that is responsible for joining in and leaving the meeting. So for this project, we have used SQLite database. So you might have doubt like what essentially is a database. So no, we use database to store data. That's the most obvious reason. And the reason that we are using a database is that we want to have persistent storage of data. Let's say in the morning, I have added a schedule for a meeting, and again in the evening, I don't want to re-enter it because I've already entered in the morning. So I want some way in which data can be persistently stored in the in the system. So we are using a database. Again, Python comes built in with SQLite library, which with which it can interact directly with a file and do all the functions of a database built into Python. So we don't have to install a database separately and connect it with our Python. So all hassles have been removed. So the best choice for us is using the SQLite database. So SQLite, as the name itself says, it's a SQL-based database. And as I already mentioned, that Python has a library to access the SQLite database called the SQLite 3. And this is intended for working with this database. And obviously, we will be using this for storing our meeting details. So now I think we are on the code page of SQLite. So first of all, to use SQLite, we must import SQLite 3. So on the first line, we are importing it. So also from OS, we are importing path. We would be using that. So overall, we would require three major functions. Okay, the first function would be to create the database, which is written as create DB. The second function would be to add data in. For our example, it would be to add a timetable or the meeting details. So it is called def add timetable. And we have a function which would list out all the data. So all the meetings that have been stored on the database. So we have three functions in this file, and we will go through one by one. So the easiest one being creation of a database. So the process through which we handle database using Python. So what we do is we use now we have imported SQLite 3, and we use the connect function or the connect method to connect to our database. Okay, and in that connect function, we pass the name of the file or the name of the database we want to access. So there can be two cases. First, that the file already exists, and the second case that the file is not present. So if the file is already present, it will use that file, and if the file is not originally present on your system, then Python will create that file for you. Okay, so we have created a file timetable.db which will store all our meeting details. Okay, then the line is db is equal to SQLite.3, and we are passing the name of the file. Okay, so the second line is db.cursor. So what essentially is a cursor now? Now, after we have connected to our database, we would require. So after this, we create the cursor object. Now, the cursor object is used to execute all the commands, and it is used to communicate with the SQL database. Now, the cursor is responsible for traversing the database and fetching all the records from the database. And the cursor has a major role in working with Python. All the commands that will be executing in the database will be executed by this cursor object only. So it is a very essential part of our the entire code. Again, so now we know that we have connected to our database. We know that we have a cursor who will be executing those code. The third step being, now we actually have to execute those instructions. And executing instructions is fairly easy. We can just use the .execute method, and inside that we can pass the entire query or the entire command, and it will be executed. So the command that we are using is mycursor.execute, and inside that function, whatever we are passing is the actual SQL command, and the command is also pretty self-explanatory. If you have studied SQL in your +2 or before, then you would realize that this is the same thing which you have done with MySQL or any other SQL-based database. If you are entirely new to SQL-based databases, do not worry. We are using only 2 or 3 of the basic language syntaxes. If you want to get more details, you can always refer to the docs and refer to various resources on the internet. So we want to create now we have already created our database. Now a database is essentially a collection of various tables. So inside the database, we want to create a table with the name timetable. So we use the command create table timetable, and obviously a table is made up of rows and columns, and we know that the columns are the data fields, and inside the rows we enter the data. So we have a field for a column for name, which is a text variable. So it would store text content. Start time. So it would be a column that will be storing the start time of our meeting, which would also be a text, and end time of the meeting, and obviously on which day that meeting is actually scheduled. So up until now, what we have done is we have executed our instruction, but this change has not been made into the database yet. So you can say that execution is done, but we don't have committed those changes. Okay, there is a question by Murugudu again, and I will be taking it just now. What are the why the start time and end time are text when they can be date time? Okay, so obviously we can have used start time and date time as end time also, but the main reason is that we want to use those the values of start time and end time to communicate with other Python functions, and those functions also allow us to write the start time and end time in the text format directly, so we don't have to convert it into date time. For example, when we will be using the schedule module of Python, the schedule module which we'll be using for automating the scheduling process, it directly accepts time in date format, and that is actually easier to write. I can directly write 5 p.m. as 17.00 instead of typing it in a actual date format. So that's the reason. Again, so we commit those changes into the database by using db.commit. Now db.commit writes those changes, so you can say that that table has now been created inside our database. We then close our connection because we are not performing any further actions, and then we can just print created database. So with only like 4 to 5 lines of code, we are creating our own database and adding a table into it. Anyone who has not understood this part of creation of database can ask. Okay, so now we'll be moving forward. Now once it is one of the functions that will be requiring, that is a create function. Now you would obviously want to add the meeting details. So that would contain the necessary data about a meeting. And for that, we have a function which is add timetable, which will be adding our meeting details. So first of all, the first line is a condition check. And why do we need to check that condition? The simple reason being, before we want to add something to our database, we first need to be sure that the database is actually present and it has a table in which we will write into. So we want to check that if path.exists timetable.database, which essentially will return true or false, depending on whether the database is present or not. And if the database is not present, then it will create the createDB function. And as I already mentioned, that the createDB function will now create the database, and then we can it is like, you can say, an error handling, and then we can now proceed to actually entering data into our date table. So we are providing some options to the user, which is like add a meeting, and there is exit. So there are two options. While like option is one. So what we want to do is we are using 4 variables: name, start time, end time, and day. We are inputting the meeting time. We are asking the user to enter the start time, and there is explicitly mentioned that the start time should be input. The input should be in 24-hour format. Now this again it makes our life easier because the schedule library will directly accept that time as a string in 24-hour format, and we don't have to do any further conversions. So the start time and the end time are handled similarly, and they would need to be entered in their 24-hour format, and obviously the day on which day the meeting is scheduled. Okay, so until now what we have seen is that we are grabbing 4 values from the user by taking input, and again now since now we want to perform something on the database, first of all, the steps are the same. First, we need to connect. Then we need to create a cursor object, and then we are again executing a command. So this time we have the values taken as input from the user, and now we want to write those values. So the way we do that is by using myCursor.execute. Now, execute function I already mentioned is used for executing the SQL commands, and the commands that we need to execute are put as a string inside the parenthesis. So inside insert into. So insert is the keyword which says that we want to insert data into then the name of the table. So we created a table called timetable inside the createDB function. So we want to insert into timetable, and then we write values. Essentially, values refer to the individual set of data that we will be entering, and then this is a Python way of writing %s, and then we can refer to the variables that that %s will get replaced by. So it would get replaced by name, start time, end time, and day. So all these 4 variables, while this command is executing, all these 4 data will get entered into the database. And again, to commit our changes, we will do db.commit, and then we can close our connection by db.close. So this function will write a row of data into our timetable. Any question regarding this function? Okay, so then we'll moving on to the last function in the database part, that is view timetable. So the view function is simply, it will print all the data that is currently stored on the database. So it has basically it will execute a command which is select asterisk from timetable. Now this asterisk is a special keyword. What it signifies that we want to select everything from that timetable, and since we are executing select asterisk from database, it would not be the result that we will get will not be a single line. It would be essentially a list of all the entries that we have done so far. So we will use a for loop to iterate over all those entries. So we can just use the for loop snippet in Python, that is for row in myCursor.execute. We can print that row. And again, since we are not manipulating the database, we do not need to commit any of our changes, and we can simply close our connection. So these were the 3 functions that we will be requiring for communicating with the database. And if you have some doubts regarding all these functions, you can ask, or then I will be moving on to the scheduling part. Okay, since there are no doubts, I can move on to the scheduling part. Okay, so the main, you can say, core part of this automated bot is that it can schedule our meetings. And so the heart of this code lies in the scheduler function. Now, again, you can say Python makes our life easier because it has a library called the schedule library, which is essentially used to schedule a task at a particular time, at every day or a particular day of the week. Okay, so this schedule library is not built directly into the Python package. We have to install it separately, and the installation is pretty simple. We just use pip install schedule, and it will install it. Anurag, if you can go to the top and show that import statement.
Yeah. So again, the first thing that you always need to do is to activate your virtual environment. So I'll do that first. Right. And once you've activated your environment, then you can go ahead and type in pip install schedule, which will, for you, since if you don't already have it installed on your virtual environment, it will go ahead and install it. Since I already have it installed, it's telling me that requirement is already satisfied.
Okay, so we have installed this library, and then we can directly import schedule in the top as we import every other library or module in Python. Okay, so what are we doing inside the scheduler function is that we need to iterate through all of our meetings inside our database. Okay, so the scheduler needs the data based on which it will say, okay, so on Monday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. you have a meeting for something XYZ. So I got it. Now again, the scheduler needs to know, okay, on Tuesday I have a meeting from, let's say, 11 a.m. to 12 noon on such topics. So so here's the role of database comes in, since the data needs to be persistent for the schedule function, so that it can continuously check which meetings are still left or which meetings need to be scheduled at what intervals. So now, as we already saw in the view timetable function, we need to iterate through all the items in our list, because normally there won't be a single entry in our table. There would be multiple rows, and each row contains an exact meeting data. So we need to iterate through all the rows. So we are iterating in the same way for row in mycursor.execute. Obviously, first of all, we need to connect to the database, and we need my cursor is equal to db.cursor so as to get an instance of the cursor object. Okay, so now the way in which we entered data into a timetable was, first we entered the name of the meeting, then we entered the start time, then we entered the end time, and finally we entered the day. Okay, so all those are, you can say, items in a list. So the first item, that is name, can be accessed using row and row 0, then start time by row 1, end time row 2, and day by row 3. So using this like indexing, we are able to get the 4 individual variables for each row. Okay. So now what we are doing is, we are saying that if also like a day dot lower. So what essentially now we need to do is, we need to check that whether the day is Monday. If it is on Monday, then we need to tell the scheduler, okay, you need to schedule this on Monday. If the day is, let's say, Friday, then we need to tell the scheduler, okay, you need to schedule this on Friday. So we need to check what the day exactly is. And to be on the safe side, we have used day dot lower. The reason for using day dot lower is, you can enter Monday with a capital M or a small m, or you can type entirely in capital or entirely in lowercase. So to overcome that, what we are doing is, we are using day dot lower, and if day dot lower is equals Monday, that is, we are comparing it if it is Monday, and similarly we are comparing if it is Tuesday or if it is Wednesday, and so on. So the code for Monday is exactly the same for all other days, just we have changed the name of the day. So let's see the code for Monday. What we are telling is, we are telling schedule dot every dot Monday. So what we are telling, that on every Monday, because logically, when we are scheduling things, we know that the meetings would be scheduled on this day of the week, and this is the functionality that directly schedule module provides us. It can directly schedule a thing for, in a, you can say, in continuous intervals or in periods. That is, on every Monday it can schedule something. So schedule dot on every Monday, at start time, okay, at this time, do something. So inside that do, we need to tell, okay, what you need to do. And inside that do, you can say, inside, as a parameter to the do function, we pass whatever we need to do. Let's say if you want to print something, then on every Monday, we want, on every Monday at let's say at 8 o'clock in the morning, I want to print good morning. So the syntax would be schedule dot every Monday at start time, then do, and then we can write this print statement. Anurag, can you just show that syntax so that it is more clear what exactly the do function is doing?
So what we're essentially doing is we do schedule, we call every to make it weekly, then we give the day, so let's say Monday, then we chain in the time, so let's say it is some time, just a variable, right? I don't know what it is, let's just say it's a variable, and then I chain in dot do, right? And inside dot do I can basically write something like print good morning, right? And what this will do is basically every single Monday at this specific time, schedule will make sure that on the terminal this message, like this line of code, gets executed. So on the terminal you will see good morning being printed, right? So you can basically take this idea and you can extend it to say that instead of just executing one single line of code, how about I execute multiple lines of code, right? And those multiple lines of code I can wrap in. Again, guys, if you don't have any questions to ask, please mute yourselves. So instead of executing, so what I can do is I can take those multiple lines of code and wrap them up in a function. And that's what we're doing here, right? So join meeting is basically a function. Okay. So inside the function, we will be defining the function later on to say what it exactly does. But what typically join meeting does is that it contains the code that you need in order to join the meeting, as the name suggests. And after join meeting, all these other values that you're passing in as parameters, they're actually just parameters for this join meeting function, right? So basically inside, so if we think about the definition of this do function, right, where it is defined in the schedule library, what's typically happening is that inside do, join meeting is being called, and inside join meeting we are passing in these values as parameters to join meeting, right? So somewhere inside do you have a statement like join meeting, and then inside it we're passing in name, we're passing in start time, and we're passing it end time, right? So somewhere inside the definition of do you have this kind of a statement, right? So what this does is basically every single Monday at this time, this function will be executed, and inside this function we'll be passing in these parameters. So that's basically the crux of what we're doing here.
Okay, so now I have a question for you guys. We just wrote join meeting over there. We didn't call join meeting no, like the very way we call a function, that is by using parentheses. So I would have done like join meeting and then parentheses. Why did I just write join meeting and didn't write the parentheses over there? Basically, if we just call the function right here, when our code will be executed, when Python will be executing the code, what would happen is, if join meeting has word parenthesis, it will start executing join meeting instead of just telling schedule module ki, okay, like on Monday at this time, you need to do whatever is there in the join meeting. You don't need to do it now. If I call join meeting, then if I call join meeting by using those parentheses, it will not schedule that. It will now start executing whatever is inside that join meeting. So you obviously don't want join meeting to get executed at that time. You just want to tell schedule कि देखो Monday को इतना बजे मेरा ये meeting है, तो तुम you use join meeting at that time, and whatever is written inside join meeting, you execute at that instant of time, not now. Okay, so that was it. Again, one more thing that I would like to ask is, after join meeting, I am passing. No, okay, Anurag, you could remove those parentheses. I am writing name, start time, and end time. So what exactly are those, and what would happen if I like the do function? Like when we showed print something, we didn't write anything after the print statement, but here we are passing 4 parameters: one, the name of the function, and other 3 parameters. Someone can tell what exactly those mean in Python? Okay, so Nitin had answered that question that it would be executed at the same time, but we want to execute at the scheduled time. That's the correct answer. I didn't see the chat at that time. It was good, Nitin. Thank you for your answer. Someone who would try this question. What exactly is this name start time and end time in respect to calling of in respect to Python functions?
I think name is the name of the meeting and start time and end time are the respective times to get into and get out of the meeting.
That we have already said that name start time and end time. Uh, like what does in I could have written some more variables after name start time and end time. How does the do function know what exactly has to do? How is it able to get name start time, end time, and everything else? How does Python handle that? So essentially in Python, we have something called args and quarks that are arguments and keyword arguments. So after this join meeting, whatever we are passing, name, start time, and end time, they are being accepted as arguments. And hence, no, you can say the do function is able to accept any number of parameters that we pass to it, not just a one function or two. You can say one parameter or two parameters. Okay, so like we have
So
discussed. Yes.
So
Ask.
mostly those any parameters we can pass, but those which we are calling in the print statement only those will be printed.
So basically, what it is doing is the do function knows key. I have to call join meeting when it is a scheduled time. That's for sure. No, the schedule function knows at least key. I will call the join meeting when it is actually scheduled. But it also might happen that the join meeting may require some other variables as its parameters. Here, the join meeting would require the name, start time, and the end time, because all these values will be required to check uh, if there is a meeting in the actually in MS Teams or not. So like there could be even more, like after the end time there could be one more variable, be it XYZ. So then what do function is doing, using args, like in Python we can pass any number of arguments and we can refer to them as args. All those are passed as a list. So this name, start time, and end time are actually been passed as a list to the do function, and then it can iterate through that list and then can call join meeting with all those parameters that are being specified after join meeting. I hope it is clear now.
Okay, cleared, Bhaiya.
Okay, so anyone has any other doubt for the scheduling on Monday? Because the rest on scheduling for every other day is same. There is a change that it would be scheduled on every Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on the day of the week. But this is the entire, like in essence, only 4 lines are being written over here. Okay, so since we don't have more doubts, if the code is written for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, okay, you could have written for Sunday also. We didn't expect that we will have meetings on Sunday also.
Bhaiya, one more question.
Yes.
Why are we writing for all days separately? Can't we make it run in a loop?
You could have done it in a loop, but if you see line number 183, we have to explicitly say every dot Saturday. So you can't do this with loop.
This is the catch, right? This is the
We
catch.
can initiate a list or an array which will actually send the days, and we can connect with that.
No, look, you don't understand something. If I'm sending in a loop, I still have to write if day dot lower equal to Monday, then you have to do a dot Monday. If day dot lower equal to Tuesday, then I basically cannot replace this with a variable. Understand what I'm saying? Like
Yes,
in string templates, you can use formatted strings and you can wrap them in a variable like we're doing here. But this is not a string, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
basically, when you assign x equals 5, so you do print x. No, you can't replace x by like double quotes x. That means something different. So here Monday is referring to a variable, not to a string, and so you
Okay.
can't
Okay.
replace a variable with a string.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's why we had to hard code it for each day of the week. Like Mugudu is saying that we could use an f string on a template and use eval. Yeah, definitely we can try that using f string and eval. I think that eval would be able to convert that to a variable, but currently I'm not pretty much sure. I would have to test it out oneself, like once myself. I didn't do that while I was coding it. So Murugudu, what you can do is you can try out it yourself and let us know how did it went for you. So up until this now, what happened is all the meetings got scheduled, and now we have to start executing those meetings. So we use an infinite while loop by saying while true, and while true, like it goes into an infinite loop, and what it does it like we have put a comment, it checks whether a scheduled task is pending or not. So if it is Monday, then the schedule library will see, okay, today is Monday. On Monday, do I need to do something? Okay, I need to do something at 4. So it will constantly run in the background like and go like a over and over process. And on Monday, when it is 4, it will execute the code that we have specified inside the do function. And we are just using time.sleep1, so we are sleeping for 1 second, just to you can say slow the system time, because if we just used run pending, and if we don't put a sleep, then obviously like it will like kind of crash our system, because it will like run a million times in a second. uh, Rafibullah is asking, can it work in MS Team browser and app simultaneously? See, the code that we have written uses an instance of Chrome web browser. Okay, we have used a Chrome web driver to do so, and we are doing web automation. So so whatever this bot is doing is essentially doing exactly what we would have done like manually, but it is just like performing all those actions for us. Uh, this code will not no this code will not be able to do such thing on the app. If we want to do something on the app, then we would require a driver which would be able to perform such actions on the app directly. And since we are using a web driver, it is currently capable of performing actions on a website only, or you can say performing actions on the web. Also, we are using a single function of the schedule library, that is we are scheduling it weekly, but you can use schedule library to act like the tasks to get performed only on one day, or you can set intervals that it will get performed every minute. To get all those things, you can always look up to the documentation of schedule library. Okay, so again, what schedule the schedule.run pending does is it contain, like I already mentioned, it will check again and again that what schedule is pending, or what tasks are pending to be done, and accordingly it will execute those. We don't have to worry. So if I want to do something every week, I can just start the script, and it will perform that action every week or twice a week, or depending on how I set it. So up and we have discussed the two major uh, parts of this code. One was handling the database, one the scheduling of the function. Now inside every if condition of this scheduler function, we are using this join meeting. So another important part of the entire code is the join meeting function, which contains the logic for joining a meeting on MS Teams on the stipulated time, and again leaving that meeting on the stipulated time. So Anurag, you can take over.
Yeah. So up until now, we've basically been dealing with the database part, right? But I think it's about time that we went back to the automating the browser itself with Selenium. So what we're going to do now is try and define the join meeting function, right? And this is the function that is being passed into the do function, right? This is the function that will be executed every single time whenever we hit the scheduled time for a meeting, and it will be responsible for, after you log in, right? What happens next is that you find the join button for, if a meeting is open, you find the join button for it, you click on it, you turn off the camera and mic, and then you click on join button again, and you are inside the meeting. And then you basically, the program is going to, go to sleep for the amount of time that your meeting is supposed to go on for. And then once that time is up, you basically just hang up from the meeting. Now, hanging up is going to be not so simple as just clicking on the hang up button, right? There are a few more steps involved to it. We'll be discussing those and why you need those steps. But yeah, I think we can get into the code now. So let's just take a look at the meeting once. So, okay, so this is where I am right now. Okay, so if I were to join the meeting, what usually happens is that you get, you know, like a lobby kind of a screen, right? And you have the option to turn on your video and turn on your microphone or turn them off respectively, right? So what we basically want to do is that as soon as we're greeted with that screen, we want to click on these two buttons, right, to turn them off. And once they're off, then you can click on the join button that is available. You click on it, and then you enter the meeting. So that's basically what we'll be doing now. So this is where I start defining the join meeting function. So join meeting will take three variables, right? Three parameters. So it will take the name of the meeting, right? And it will take its start time and it will take its end time. These are the bare minimum three parameters that we need in order to get our bot to work. So again, just like the previous functions, I will define the driver as global. So it uses the global Chrome driver, right? And then what I need to do is, let me just show you once. If I go to Teams, right? If I go to Teams, right? We first of all, whatever this is, the meeting name, right? Whatever the meeting name is, this is basically the team name that we want, right? So it's either glug, or we'll be using HACKME to test the bots right now. We'll be providing the link to it, but it's going to be either one of these two for me right now, right? And so I need to figure out which one I wish to join. So if you remember, we passed that in as a parameter to our database, right? In the database, we do import the meeting name, and that's what is going to be either glug or HACKME for my case, right? So let's say if I put in HACKME, right? What it's going to do is it's going to click after logging in and changing the view from grid to list, is going to click on HACKME, right? We'll click on HACKME and it will be greeted with this screen. Now, if a meeting is going on, you'll find the join button here, right? And that's what is going to click. So that's what we need to do here basically first. So first things first, we check if any meetings are currently going on or not. So basically what I'm checking is for these two things. If I have these teams present, so I'm checking if these are, if there's no team present here, then obviously like I cannot join any team or any meeting, right? So the first thing I do is that I get a list of every single um, team that is present here. As you can see, the meeting has been scheduled here, right? So I can just click on join, right? And it is this screen is greeted. So what I need to do is to turn off these two and then click on join now. So that's what I will be doing. The bot will be doing. Let me just close it up. All right. So first I need to get a list of these, and then after I get a list of these values, I need to check whether the value that I inserted as my meeting name matches or not. So that's what I'm doing here. So first I'm getting the list. Like I said, if I use elements by name, driver.find elements, it will return me a list. So that's what it's returning me. Those elements, right? If I just do a check, as you can see here, these are div tags that have a class of name channel type, right? So that's what I'm checking. Name channel type. It will basically give me a list of every single class name that we have, meeting that we have, and once we get that, we basically loop through them. We loop through them and find out if the one that we need is present or not. So meeting name is the one that we wish to join, right? The meeting that we wish to join. So what we're doing is that we're running a for loop inside for this list. So for I in available meetings, we're checking if meeting name dot lower. Again, we don't want any kind of like case sensitive issues. So we convert whenever we're checking two strings, we always convert them to the lowercase or uppercase if you want any specific standard that you need, right? We convert them to just one single case and then check. So what we're doing is that if meeting name dot lower is present in, so basically I is the element that we get from this scraping, right? So I is this hack.me, right? Like we're getting here, right? So this div element is present in I. So we're checking if that div element has an attribute of inner HTML, and we are again converting that to a lower value. So inner HTML basically returns me this thing, this hack.me or glug, right? Any one of these two values, whichever it picks up, it will basically give me this string. I'm taking that string and I'm converting it to lowercase, right? So both of these are in lowercase right now, so I can check if they're equal or not. So that's what I'm doing. I'm checking if the lowercase of this is present, and then if it is present, then I can just print that I'm joining meeting in the console, right? I can click on this, whatever I need. So if I wanted, if I in the database I inputted hack.me, I will just click on hack.me, right? And then it will greet me with this screen, and the join button will be here. So I'll click on it and I will break the loop, right? Once I get it, I don't need to check any further. So I'll break the loop. Now we have a try except block. Now once we click on the whichever meeting room that we wish, whichever team that we wish to be in, we basically check for the joining button, right? Because that's what we need to click in order to join the meeting, right? So we check for this thing. So let me just see if I can find out the okay, so this is the one, I think. Yeah, it's a pretty long one, but I can assure you that we did get from this it did have a class of TS calling join button. That's the reason why we can find it, right? So we are using the WebDriver wait syntax again, because obviously we need to wait a little bit of time before the page loads. So again, we set up a maximum time of 10 seconds, and we check if an element with the class name of TS calling join button is present or not. If as soon as it is present, we click on it. If this does not happen, right, that's the thing about try catch, right, of try except, that basically we check for one particular instance, like we try to do something, and the only time that it does not happen, we go ahead and execute the except block. So if this is not, like if the TS calling join button is not present, even after checking for 10 seconds, the TS calling join button is not appearing, then what we do is that we put the program to sleep for 60 seconds, right? We print that the join button was not found, trying again, and then we put the program to sleep for 60 seconds, right? So the program waits for 60 seconds, then it refreshes the page, and then it tries, and it basically recursively calls join meeting again. So what's basically happening here is for 10 minutes, right? For 10 minutes after the scheduled time, the bot keeps checking for a join button. That's why we have k is equal to 1, and then we run this thing for k less than equal to 10, right? So 10 seconds, for 10 times 60 seconds, so that's like 10 minutes, right? So for 10 minutes, every single minute, we check if the button has appeared or not, right? We refresh the page every single minute, and we check if the button is there or not. If after 10 minutes you see that the button is still not here, then I think we can make a safe assumption that the meeting is not here, that the meeting is not scheduled. So we can just say that seems like there is no meeting that day, and then we can continue on with what we need to do. But in case so in case that the join button does appear, right, in that case join meeting will be called. Join meeting is being called every single time as long as this loop is running. So join meeting is called, it will hit the try block, it will succeed in the try block and click on the join button and enter the meeting. So that's basically what this part of the code is doing. Now once we have clicked on the join button, right, once we do this, right, we're greeted with this screen. So now we need to do a couple of things, right? We need to turn off the camera and we need to turn off the microphone, right? So in order to do this, it's really simple. We just have to capture this slider, this button slider, and we have to click on it. And then we just click on join now, and that puts us into the meeting. So let's just see. So before we just wait for like 4 seconds for the screen to show up, the lobby screen to show up, and then we need to find the webcam, the microphone, and the join button, right? Now this is where XPath starts getting a bit messy. As you can see here, we're using webcam is equal to driver.find element by XPath, and then we're passing in this like monstrous XPath that we have here, right? So what is this basically? So the thing about manipulating websites is that if elements are being repeated a lot, right? If the elements are being repeated a lot, if you don't have a lot of unique classes or you don't have IDs that being used that much, it can become really difficult to pick up elements from the website, right? And XPath will always guarantee that you can pick up the element, right? But obviously the more generic the element becomes, the more difficult it becomes to pick the element up. So what's basically happening here is, let me just walk you through. It won't be possible for me to show you because this has an issue here that let me just see, right? So as you can see, we know that it is inside a span, right? We know that it is inside a span, and of course it is like till the outside is filled with there are a lot of div classes, and at the end you have a span that has this icon inside it. So we need to click on that span, right? So what we're basically doing is we're starting from the root, right? We're starting from the root. We're checking for a tag, all the tags that have an ID as page content wrapper. Now I can tell you that there is only one element that has this ID, page content wrapper, because obviously it is an ID, right? So has to be unique. Then we're going down one level, right? So in HTML you have a tree structure, right? You have tags nested inside tags nested inside tags. You have a structure like that. So basically what we're doing is we're picking up this element that has this ID, then we go down one level and pick up a div, specifically the div which has an index of 1. And this is where the intricacies of XPath come into play. So yesterday I showed you that if you're using find elements using XPath by XPath or by class name, for example, you can get multiple elements using this. You can get a list and then you index the list. XPath allows you to index inside the XPath syntax itself, right? You don't have to use find elements by XPath, then index it, then once you get that element, then after that you use that element to nest deeper. Like, you can't do that, right? Because I know that I need to get this span, but it's inside this huge tree structure, and inside the tree structure I have multiple divs that are the same, I have multiple spans that are the same. So how do I access those divs and those spans? So to do that, you can use indexing inside XPath itself. So that's what we're basically doing. So we're getting the element that has this ID. We're getting the div element that has index 1. Inside it there will be another div that we're picking up. Then we're getting a tag called pre-join, calling pre-join screen, right? Inside that we have a div. Inside that we have another div. Then we have a div. We have multiple divs, and we're picking up the div with index 2. Then inside that div we are picking up another div that has index 1. Same way, another div that has index 2. Then 2 more divs. Then a section. Then a div with index 2 toggle button that has index 1. A div inside that, a button inside that, and then finally a span. The span that we need, right? This one. Like I said, that we're inside a span, right? So as you can see, this is like as complicated as XPath can really get. Like sometimes websites are so generic that you have to use this kind of a methodology in order to capture elements from the website. So yeah.
Also, there is a good side to it, being the fact that like as we mentioned yesterday, that XPath is like a query language. No, it helps you to query elements from an HTML or an XML document. But our browsers that we use have also gone quite modern and powerful. So we can directly get the XPath of a very nested and a complicated element just by directly right clicking and get, like, we have get an option to copy, and then we can directly copy the XPath. So it's better that it obviously takes some time to understand the exact flow of how XPath is working. But if you want to get the XPath, no, you don't have to write this entire thing manually. Okay, we didn't even write like this entire thing manually. Our browser helps us. So Anurag, you can also show them that just by getting that element from the developer console, we can right click and get the XPath directly.
Do we have to search through the console to get the XPath?
No,
Of that
I will
element?
just show you the steps. Okay, getting XPath is really easy. Okay, it might seem difficult, but is actually easy. No, the way you get the class is the same way you get an XPath. No, it doesn't require you. Like you see that in the developer console, uh, when we right click, we get copy. Okay, so now again copy has an arrow, which means that it has further options, and directly we have copy element, copy selector, copy JS path, copy styles, copy XPath, and copy full XPath. So copy XPath is kind of a relative XPath. Copy full XPath will start from the HTML and then it will go to the end. So you don't have to type it out entirely, although it would be nice if you are able to figure out how are we getting that XPath. Okay, so you can just copy that XPath and paste it to whatever element you want.
Yes. So obviously with the current generation of browsers that we have, this becomes really easy. So, but again, it's really important that you understand what the XPath actually means, because you never know when you might have to get it manually. So once we capture the webcam toggle, so one thing that I missed here, just to check. So basically, you need to make so what basically happens that when you first get greeted with this screen, this can be on or this can be off, right? Both can be there. So basically, so you see, sometimes it happens that if there are multiple people in the meeting already, what Teams will do is that it will basically turn these off by default and tell you that since there are so and so many people inside the room, inside the meeting room, it's better if you turn off your cam and mic. But what happens if that's not the case, right? What happens if it just decides to keep it on? It just decides to keep it on, right? So in those cases, you need to have a safety check, right? Check if it is already off or it is already on. Depending on that, choose to click on it. Like if it's already off, you don't need to click on it. And if it's off, then you can go and click and turn it off. So that's basically what we're doing here, right? From the webcam element, it has an attribute called title, and that will either be turn camera off or on. And if it is off, then that means that currently it is on. So then I can just click on it and it will be switched to off. Then I hard code in a sleep just to make sure that it works properly. And then I do the same for the microphone, right? And again, I found it using XPath by copying it from the dev console. The XPath will be something like this. Again, it also has the same attribute title, which has either mute microphone or unmute microphone. If it is mute, then that means that the microphone is currently on. So you click on it to turn it off. Put the program back to sleep for 1 second again. And then once you have turned these two options off, you can then go ahead and click on the join now button. So again, we're using dev console to find out the XPath. We're capturing it using driver find element by XPath, storing it inside a variable called join now button, and we're clicking on it. Now, once you have clicked on it, you are inside the meeting. Now, once you're in the meeting will go on as it is. Like you don't have to do anything during the duration of the meeting, but you need to prepare a couple of things. So as you can, just like we showed you before, the last parameter that's going inside join meeting is the end time, right? So we already use start time to basically check when if we have to join a meeting or not. So now we have to check end time to see when to leave the meeting if you're inside one. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start by scheduling the time to leave the meeting. So we want to use time.sleep for this, and time.sleep obviously takes the duration, right? It does not take a exact time, it takes a duration. So what we need to do is basically subtract the end time and the start time, and we'll get the duration of the meeting. So that's exactly what we'll be doing. So I take a variable called meet running time, right? I use the date time library to basically convert it from I use a datetime library to call a method on it called strp time, and you can always check the documentation. What it basically does is that it takes the date time from a string and converts it to a datetime object, right? Which you can then subtract, because remember, you cannot subtract time like two normal integers, right? If you do that, then you're not going to get the proper running time. So we have to use the datetime library in order to achieve that. So what we're basically doing is we're taking the end time and the start time, right? Which were strings. Remember that we're taking them as strings. We're converting them to datetime objects and then subtracting it. So the syntax for it is basically you call strp time, you pass in the string of the time, and you pass in another variable called tmp. Now tmp is basically the format, right? The format in which the time is being, this end time is being passed in, right? So our format was hour, then a colon, and then minutes, right? So that's what this tmp definition is, right? We're basically telling %h means that this is the hour clock, and after colon %m means this is the minutes clock, right? So when we convert it to a date time object, that's how it's going to be converted to hours and minutes. And then we subtract these two, and once we subtract these two, we'll get a time with some hours and some minutes, right? So that's what meet running time will look like, some hours and some minutes. So if it's like 1 hour 20 minutes, that's a duration. So we'll get 01 colon 20. That's the kind of object that you will get, not exactly colon, but will look like that, right? And then we take that time and we pass it into the sleep function to basically tell the program that, look, you can basically go to sleep for this duration of the time, because nothing is really needed now. Once you're inside the meeting, the meeting will go on as is needed. and the only time the script needs to run again is when the duration of the meeting is over. So what I'm doing is I'm calling meet running time, and I'm using the dot seconds to basically get how many seconds it is, right? So it will be some hours and some minutes. So I'm basically taking how many seconds it will actually convert into, and I'm passing it inside sleep, and it basically puts the program into sleep for that amount of time. And once that's done, once the duration gets over and the program activates again, then now you need to look at a couple of things. So now I'm going to go back to the meet. I'm going to join now. Let's see if I can connect. Okay, so I'm inside here, right? So I'm inside the meeting, right? It's going on. Now let's say that the time for the meeting to end has come, right? So ideally what you would do is you just click on hang up, right? It will show the leaving screen and you'll be back, right? But that is not a reliable way to do so, and I'm going to tell you why. So there's this one issue that sometimes will happen with Microsoft Teams. Not exactly an issue, but Teams does it. Is it will put you in a survey screen, right? Once you click on hang up, right, it puts you in a survey screen, and that is a problem, because let's say that you have multiple meetings on the same day, right, and your script is running for the entire duration of the day. You attended one meeting, the meeting went for as long as it needed to, it got over, and then you click on this hang up button. Instead of going back to this screen, it will show you a survey screen, right, and it will ask you how the quality of the meeting was, and that will completely mess up every single meeting that comes after the one that you just got out of, right? Because now the structure of the page is no longer this one but the one of the survey, and that's an issue, because dealing with that is, we don't want to deal with that, right? So, and obviously that again requires its own checks, right? You have to find the XPath of its own, the skip or whatever is present on that screen to get back to this one. We don't want to handle it. So what we can do is we can just join, right? We're in this state, and we can just click on Teams, right? And as soon as we click on Teams, what's going to happen is that this screen is going to minimize and go to the top corner, as you can see here, right? And once this happens and you click on hang up, you're not going to be greeted with that screen, the survey screen, right? This is something that just, it is like that. Don't ask me why it's like that, but it is like that. That's what Microsoft has decided for the product to do. So we can use this, right? We can use this workaround to leave the meeting instead of just clicking on hang up directly. So that's what we're going to do here. Right? So Teams app bar basically signifies this element, right? We click on it, and the screen will get minimized and it will go to the corner, right? So we're capturing it and then we're clicking it, and as you can see here, we're using again li3, right? If we go back here, you can see 1 2 3, right? So it will pick up that one, it will click it, then it will go to sleep for 1 second just to let that go to the shift to the corner. And when it does, then we capture the hang up button using this XPath, right? We find it using this XPath. It has the ID, so it's going to be easy. We find it using the XPath, and then we click on it. Once we click on it, you leave the meeting, and then we can print in the console meeting left. And that is about it. That's about the join meeting function, right? You join the meeting, you stay in the meeting, and then you exit the meeting. That's how you handle it. The primary thing that you need to take away from this is the fact that you can just extract the XPath from the DevTools itself. So you can literally just do this. You can do the entire thing by just using find element by XPath. You don't even have to use IDs and class path and class names or say selectors, right? You can just use find element by XPath and access the elements using this. So that was about it. And with this, I think we can test the code finally once, and let's see if it works. Everything is okay. So one more thing, you've written all the functions, that's all fine. But if you remember yesterday, in the main function, we just had login because we were just logging into Teams. But now we have a lot of options, right? We have the option to, view and modify our timetable, and then we have the option to start the bot, right? So depending on what options the user picks, we have to redirect them towards the function that is required, right? So what's basically going to happen is the console. Okay, so let's take a look at the main function. So what we're doing first is we are putting in this kind of an option table, right? And you have the option to either modify the table, you have the option to view the timetable, or you have the option to start the bot. If you need to change your scheduling, you pick the modify timetable option. So that's what I'm going to do. So let me, this is the one that has been opened up by the driver. So let me go here. So am I in the meeting right now? Let me just close this up. Let me refresh the page. And okay, so this meeting is going on, right? So let me try and join this one. Let's see if I can. So the first thing that I need to do is to first, enter the details of the meeting inside the database. So I'm going to start by doing a modify timetable. Now, as you can see, as soon as I click on option 1, it creates the timetable.db for me. You don't have to manually create it. Now, once I have it, I have two more options, right? I have the option to either add a meeting or exit. So I'm going to add a meeting. So the meeting name was hack.me, right? So it's going to be hack.me. Meeting start time. So right now we are at 1937, right? So let me just put it at 1939 just to be safe, because what's going to happen is that as soon as, if I, let's say, do 1937 or 937 will not work, but let's say if I do 1938, and 38 is already there when the script starts executing, the schedule will just skip it, right? It will say that the time is gone, right? And it will wait for when 39 comes, 37 comes back again. So let's just stay in for a minute. Today is going to, okay, so one thing I forgot, let me just exit out of it. So we created this keeping in mind that you won't have classes on Sunday, but as you can see, we are conducting this on a Sunday. So I just need to get just copy this and add in a case for Sunday as well. Just Sunday, and that should do it. Yes. So let me run the bot. We add a meeting. Meeting name is going to be hack.me. Let's do 1940. Yep. Let's exit at 1941. Let's do Sunday. It's added. Let me exit. Let's start it once again. And this time you start the bot. Yeah. So it's going to sign into my account. Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, it will close up the camera mic and we'll click on join. So we have successfully entered the meeting. Let's see if, so what did I put the exit time? 41, right? So it will stay in for a minute, and as soon as the clock hits 41, uh, it should minimize the window and exit the meeting. Let's see. So we are at 41 now. It goes back, hangs up, and we are out. So it seems that our bot works perfectly, but don't get too excited about this, right? Because like I said, we don't take any responsibility for what you do with this, so don't use it to mess around with your, you know what I'm talking about. So make sure you don't do any of that. This is really just to give you a grasp of how you can use Selenium to start automating your any kind of automation you can perform on the web with Selenium, right? This is something that you can probably use for your CTFs as well. Might help you there as well. And XPath, finding elements using XPath is a skill that will help you when you're doing web scraping, right? So in web scraping, you basically take data from a website and you retrieve it, right? And there also you use this XPath to get data from to pick up the elements. And for, let's say, websites that don't have an API, uh, web scraping becomes the only option left in order to get data from that website. So it helps in web scraping as well. So this has been about Selenium and our workshop. We'll be moving on to the outro now. So Nirvik, I think you can take over.
Yeah. So I think so. That's
I
it
can,
with
I can
Angab.
stop
Are
sharing
you
the
there?
screen as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I can stop sharing the screen. Yeah. Yeah, Nirvik, you can continue.
Yeah, so with this, we actually come to the end of our 2-day HACKME workshop on Selenium and browser automation. The entire code, what we had written, will be available on GitHub, and we will be sharing the link uh, with you. Also, like the previous session was on YouTube, so you can always revisit that. This session will also get uploaded on your YouTube channel. In case you missed some part or you want to revisit that, you can always check out that. Yeah, so as I already said, this was whatever we wanted to cover in this 2-day workshop. The videos will be available on YouTube. You can always check out that. Uh, so it was like a very basic project which get you all started with automation and Selenium. You could always, if you like in your daily life, you are using web for so many purposes, and if you find something that you are doing every day and it's very boring, then you would obviously write a script and it would do it for you like within seconds. So again,
Bhaiya, what's the other uses of Selenium apart from
uh,
this? Like
okay,
where
so
can we apply it
uh,
more?
actually, when enterprise level applications are built, so let's say a big company is making a very big application on the web, then what happens is it requires a lot of testing. Okay, and it requires stress testing. Like at a time, we need to simulate like no millions of users at a time to check how that website is performing. And obviously, you can't ask a million people to log in and no use the website at the same time and see how that website is performing. So at that time, like the testing team uses this like Selenium and writes all those scripts and then initiates the scripts in such a way that it would simulate like a million people are accessing that website and they are able to test that out. So it is like an enterprise level use of Selenium. Again, like you would have noticed that sometimes on those e-commerce websites there is a sale, let's say at some time, and within like fraction of seconds all that stocks, no, they go finished. So there also this, no, bots come into play. There are people who employ, like the use of bots is there so that, no, it takes like within fraction of time the purchase can be made. Like if we are entering the details manually, it would take us some time, but if the bot is entering those details, it would be entered instantaneously. So that is for, no, fun, and you can say you can use Selenium for fun and recreation, but on a serious level it is majorly used for testing of websites or on enterprise level.
Okay, Bhaiya. Yeah.
Okay, also we will upload this entire session on YouTube. Uh, you can check it there also. In case you have doubts, you can always leave doubts in the comment section. We would be happy to answer that. You should always can download the GLAC app to get notified about all our further events, and stay tuned for our YouTube channel for more such content on, development and open source. So with this, we come to the end. This is me and Anurag signing off.
I'm getting